All right. Hi. Good evening, everybody. My name is Nicole Josie. I am the SEPAC president for this current school year. And welcome to our Department of Special Services overview. Kathy Gesumaria is going to give an overview of the Department of Special Services, so you guys can know about everything that is in the department, going on in the department. And Tim Franklin, who is the supervisor over CHS, is also here as well to answer any questions. We're going to ask you guys to please hold off on the questions until the end of the presentation, because we'd like to get a real clean recording to save and put on our SEPAC SOMA website. All right. Thank you so much. Kathy, you have the floor.
Okay, thanks so much, Nicole, and thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this evening. I am going to go ahead and share my screen so you can see the presentation. Okay, so I thought I would start by giving, of course, a general overview of the central office administration. Of course, myself, I'm the assistant superintendent, Kathy Gesumaria. That's all of our contact information there as well. The supervisors of special services, Sue Ellis, Christina Quintinieri, and Tim Franklin. And Tim Franklin is here with us this evening to answer any questions you may have at the end of the presentation. I thought it was important to go over our supervisor structure, and especially to note that our wonderful special education supervisors do so much more than what you may see in the buildings. They do a lot of work behind the scenes with our child study team and the central office workings. So Sue Ellis oversees Clinton, South Mountain, and the Annex, the Montrose Early Learning Center, as well as 10 outside preschool providers, and South Orange Middle School. Christina Puntinieri is responsible for Delia Bolden, Marshall, Seth Boyden, Tuscan, and Maplewood Middle School. And Tim Franklin, although it may seem like the ladies have a little bit more responsibility than he does, he has Columbia High School and our transition programs, which is a very big undertaking. In addition to those building level responsibilities, each supervisor is responsible for the child study team compliance, so maintaining timelines, maintaining the proper paperwork and correspondence, following all the legal guidelines with their child study teams that are housed within each of those buildings. They also work with the child study teams and the special education teachers to QA/QC progress reports and make sure that they are squeaky clean before they go out to everyone and make sure that they go out on time. They are also responsible for a multitude of teacher observations in the classroom, which is wonderful, and summative evaluations at the end of the school year. Just for an example, Christina and I were talking about her load of teacher observations this year, and she has 96 teacher observations to do. So that is quite a job in all of our schools, but a wonderful job. We're making sure that the IEPs that we are writing are actually being implemented correctly in the classroom. So it is the end result of all of our hard work together as a team. In addition to that, Sue Ellis runs our extended school year program. She oversees our district dynamic learning map initiative and also our intentional integration initiative. So what that means is that every time a new student moves into the district, or they come from our preschool into kindergarten, or from the outside without having gone to our preschool into kindergarten, they go through the algorithm and they are placed in their tier school based on the intentional integration initiative. So, of course, with respect to special education programming, that takes precedence. So she is always involved in making sure that a student's special education needs are taken into account with regard to the algorithm. So she's in constant communication with the ALVS group, with registration, with the superintendent's office, with the assistant superintendent's office, and Dr. Wabel. And they work together to make sure that everyone's needs are met within the confines of the Intentional Integration Initiative. Christina has the enormous undertaking of managing all of our district paraprofessionals and working in concert with ESS and Gloria, our district representative and manager, to make sure that all the needs are met, to make sure that everyone is functioning well, and that all of our students are supported appropriately. She also oversees the summer CST team from preschool through 8th grade. Tim, in addition to Columbia High School and all the other responsibilities within the building, he oversees our district-related services, our non-CST social worker. So that was a term for anyone who's new on this call I had to get used to. I thought to myself, what in the world is a non-CST social worker? So a non-CST social worker is a social worker, but they do not case manage any students, and they are not technically a part of the child study team. Interestingly enough, they are the social workers that deliver any IEP-driven counseling services. So they are considered non-CST social workers because they are not case managers. He also oversees Effective School Solutions, which we'll talk about later, is our wraparound program for our students who have school anxiety, who need special level counseling. That wraparound program is fantastic, and Sue works with those clinicians to ensure that it runs well. He also manages all of our contracted service providers, which you will see later on are many. And he also oversees the summer child study team at Columbia High School. So again, while he only has one building, he has a lot of other tasks. I thought it was important, and this is also on our website, of course, to share the Department of Special Services kind of more specific chain of command. I know that there's a district level chain of command, but I think it's important to talk about who to go to from a special services standpoint. So, of course, all concerns need to be brought to the person that's closest to the issue first, of course. That would be, in most cases, the teacher, whether it's the general education teacher or the special education teacher. And those concerns would be about classroom instruction, peer interaction. We'll talk a little bit more in detail in the next slide about some other things that you would go to the classroom teacher for. If the concerns are not rectified at that point, you would go to your case manager as your point of contact for things like program and placement, services, IEP meetings, of course, and evaluations. At that point, if things weren't resolved with your case manager, you would go to, at the elementary level, the assistant principal, then the principal. Of course, we're all kind of working together as an admin team, so it would be fine to reach out to the assistant principal and or the special education supervisor that has specific purview at that building. And then at the secondary level, you would go to your guidance counselor and case manager, your assistant principal. The assistant principals at the high school are by grade level, so you would go to this specific grade level assistant principal or Mr. Sanchez, of course, and the special education supervisor, Tim. If all of those folks were unable to help you, you would come to me. And if for some reason I was unable to help you, which the chances of that are very slim, you would move on to our superintendent. If it's still, the issue is still not resolved, of course, the Board of Education is the last step. And to get a little bit more specific with the communication protocol, for the principal, you would talk about things like teacher assignments, questions with regard to that, schedule changes, building events, attendance issues, really general information. You would go to the teacher for things such as instructional assignments, homework, class events, peer relations within the classroom, progress reports, because they are the folks filling those out, accommodations and modifications within the classroom. If you have your IEP, you know that your child is entitled to XYZ and accommodations and modifications. You have questions about how that's actually delivered in the classroom, you would speak to the teacher. Your case manager would be the point of contact for, of course, IEP development, IEP meetings, evaluations, program placement, related services, transportation, and accommodations and modifications with respect to what is written in the IEP and how it is written in the IEP. I'd like to take a moment to go over our elementary school programs. At the preschool level, we have our inclusion classes, and those are available in both Montrose and all of our provider sites. We have one preschool disabled program, or classroom rather, at Montrose. So that means that there are no non-disabled peers in the room with the preschool disabled students. And then we have 2 preschool autism rooms in Montrose. In Clinton, we have, and I'm so happy to say that in all of our elementary programs at every K-5, at every level, we have at least one section, if not more than one section of in-class resource support. That was an issue last year. That is no longer an issue, which I am so very happy about. So at Clinton, we have in-class resource support, of course, that's that co-teaching environment that is the least restrictive environment and the preferred, to have. The in-class resource support program, the pull-out resource support program for a little bit more support out of the classroom, and 3 classes that are dedicated to our students with autism. At Delia Bolden, of course, we have in-class resource support and pull-out resource, and 2 language and learning disabilities classes, which are generally speaking K2 and 3-5, broken up in that manner. It could sometimes, depending on the number of students, be K1 and 2-5, or K3 and 4-5. It really depends on the year and the needs of the students. And of course, staying within the compliance of the age range of no more than 4 years separating the students. At Marshall, we have in-class resource support and pull-out resource, of course, and another 2 language and learning disabilities classrooms. We also, new this year, have 3 autism classes, which is fantastic. I love to see, from the time that I started just a short year ago to today, the expansion of our programs. Having in-class resource support and pull-out resource at every building is fantastic, but starting to infuse those more specific classrooms dedicated to keeping students in the schools that they would be in normally are fantastic. So we have those 3 autism classes this year. At Seth Boyden, we have in-class resource support and pull-out resource, of course, and we have 2 emotional regulation impairment rooms dedicated to helping students develop a toolkit to address their behaviors and how that may affect their ability to learn and access their education. And at South Mountain and Tuscan, we have in-class resource support and pull-out resource. At every elementary school, we have an evidence-based reading teacher that is shared between buildings. At the middle and high school level, at Maplewood Middle School, we have in-class resource support and pull-out resource, as well as language and learning disabilities classrooms. We have 2 of those classrooms, and we actually added a classroom this year based upon the need. And at South Orange Middle School, we have in-class resource support and pull-out resource, and 1 autism class and 1 multiple disabilities class. And each middle school has a dedicated evidence-based reading teacher. At Columbia High School, of course, we have in-class resource support and pull-out resource. We have 1 autism class and a language and learning disabilities. I don't want to call it a class because it's really more of a program. They are dedicated to keeping our students flowing throughout and moving about. So they are language and learning disabilities classes that are focused on the core classes, and the students do move among those classes. So they're not in one self-contained room. And then we have our multiple disabilities class, which is 1 class at this point. Throughout our programs, we have counseling services and support. Going back to our non-CST social workers, again, they provide IEP mandated counseling in all of our buildings. And we'll talk more about them, and you'll see a list of who they are and where they are later on. At the middle schools, we have what we call our iStep program, which stands for In-School Therapeutic Education Program. Again, a wonderful wraparound program that focuses on not just the academic, but also the social, emotional support and counseling needs of our students. At MMS, at Maplewood Middle School, we have an in-district staff member at the helm of that program as the clinician. And at SOMS, new this year, we have an Effective School Solutions clinician, and they are partnered with, at both schools, partnered with a special education teacher to meet the academic and social emotional needs of our students. At the high school, we have Effective School Solutions And that is, again, pretty much the high school version of ISTEP, which does happen to be run by an outside contracted provider. I consider them our employees. I don't see any difference. They jump in at every moment we need them, the clinicians, and they work hand in hand with our special education teachers to provide that support at the high school level. So again, the social emotional component coupled with the academic needs. And then in addition to that, at Columbia High School, we have our CAP program, which is the Columbia Academy program. And that is just really smaller class sizes catered to students with anxiety in the larger classes. And the best part about that is that they're receiving the same robust curriculum and instruction. It's just in a smaller environment. And then to go over our child study teams. So in most cases, except for our high school team and our middle school teams at the elementary, they are shared teams. So we have Montrose and all of our preschool providers. We have our school psychologist, Michael Morose, and our social worker right now is Terry Barry Austin. We hired a learning consultant at the preschool level, and unfortunately, she wasn't able to stay with us. She joined us for a short time, and we are on the search again. But no worries. Tracy and Michael are taking over her caseload, and we are filling in the gaps with help from the rest of the team until we find that permanent replacement. At Clinton and South Mountain, we have Renee Kay and Jen Cooperman and Barbara Dean. At Delia Bolden and Tuscan, we have Nicole Osher, Lashia Johnson, and Valerie Frost. At Marshall and Seth Boyden, we have Laura. I always struggle with her last name. I call her Dr. Laura. I'm going to stick with that. Dominica Herrera, Mara Fox, and Madison Diamond. Dominica, Michael, and Tracy are new to the team, new to our child study team. At Maplewood Middle School, we have Sabrina Rodriguez, Maria Serpico, and Carolyn Murray. And South Orange Middle School, we have Penny Petchers, Dana Franza, and Denisha King. At Columbia High School, we of course have a larger team for that larger caseload. David Velder, Nicole DeCosia, Greg Beth, Catherine Fuentes, Samantha Palmieri, and Lee Carter. And then we have 2 case managers dedicated to our out-of-district students, and that's not just at Columbia High School, that is throughout the district, and that's Michael Zrabi and Yolanda Sanchez. And related services is a bit hard to see. I won't go through all of those names, but as you can see, we have a number of non-CST social workers that work with our students, occupational therapists, physical therapists, speech and language therapists, and 3 BCBAs. Some of those folks are in district. When you see a parentheses with a D after the name, that is an in-district staff member. When you don't see a D, it is a person who is working with us through an outside contractor. But again, just like ESS, we treat those folks as our own employees. They behave as our own employees. They are a part of our team and our family, and they are, of course, treated as such. I wanted to just go over within our district goals, and I don't know if it was, these are tentative, so they may change. I didn't put the entire goal and all of the key performance indicators. I'm just giving you kind of a brief summary because I believe they're still tentative. We may still tweak them a little bit, but the spirit of it won't change. So the special services just overall goal for 25-26 is that we will enhance instructional support and special education programs by implementing a collaborative model with the curriculum and instruction department. That is something that I feel very strongly about. Ann and Zoila feel, and all of the curriculum supervisors feel very strongly about. We must always focus on bridging the gap between the general education curriculum and the special education services. There shouldn't be a gap. And we need to ensure that. And we're really, really dedicated to making sure that we're providing an inclusive environment and that for all of our students, regardless of their program, and that we're really focusing on making sure that we are making that curriculum that is available to our non-disabled students available to our disabled students. And this model will involve shared planning, co-teaching, targeted professional development. We had a wonderful start to the year with some professional development done in, I believe it was called an Ed Camp model, where the teachers were able to choose different offerings. And there were certain things and certain themes that were, they had to choose something within certain themes. But it was a fantastic way of giving them choice and also making sure that we are utilizing the expertise of their colleagues. So their own colleagues and our supervisors were providing professional development, and it worked fantastic. We did, some surveys. We figured out, we got a committee in late spring and figured out what they really felt they needed professional development on. And that was coupled with our district goals. And we targeted that professional development. We're going to continue. It was so successful in the beginning of the year. We're going to continue that based on that shared instructional rubric and consistent classroom observation to improve the academic and functional outcomes of our students with disabilities, as well as our non-disabled students. And some of the, and again, there are many more. This is not an exhaustive list of the key performance indicators, but I picked the ones that kind of have the spirit of the goal at mind. A collaborative leadership team comprised of special education and curriculum and instruction representatives is formed and establishes a formal schedule for planning sessions. That leadership team completes walkthroughs, providing feedback, and using a common instructional rubric and look for, as we like to call them. Teachers participate in targeted professional development sessions focusing on a more advanced instructional strategy identified through those ongoing observations. So it's really important that their professional development plans are built upon, and the offerings that we give them are built upon what we see and what they feel they need to improve on. It sounds very obvious, but oftentimes if we're not super intentional, it won't get done. So this goal is really focusing on that intentionality. And then a summative survey at the end of the year will assess the satisfaction rate among the teachers regarding the support that they were given from CNI and special services, and we'll move forward tweaking as necessary. So speaking of moving forward, I wanted to talk about some thoughts for the future. Some of the things that I came in recognizing from last year. September 4th was my start date last year. And many of those things have already come to fruition. I felt like we needed to add another emotional regulation impairment room. That's already happened. I felt that we needed another language and learning disabilities room at the middle school. That's already happened. One of the things that would have been on the thoughts for the future was expanding the Marshall classrooms for catering to our artistic students to include a classroom that focused right now, and it's fantastic. Right now, our autistic classrooms are geared to students who can access the curriculum, who don't really, they need an ABA methodology and benefit from an ABA methodology, and they benefit from discrete trial instruction too, but not all day long. They're able to access the curriculum, they are able to work with their peers, and they're at a higher level. Not all of our students are at that level. So I saw that need coming in last year, and we weren't able to start the year immediately in September with, I should say, we weren't able to budget for that need. But it was something that I was thinking about for 26, 27. And it just so happened that the need presented itself within our incoming kindergartners and our incoming elementary school students for this year. And I presented it to our senior leadership team and to the business office. And we were able to make that third class kind of focused on a more intensive need autism classroom at the lower level, K1. We were able to make that happen this year. So I had to take that off of my thoughts for the future because it's already been realized, which is fantastic. But again, thoughts for the future. We need to think about our transition program. Right now, we send students out of district. And I think that we did that this year or last year going into this year because we didn't have very many students who were at that 18 to 21 age range where they still need our support and they still need a program for us until they're 21. There weren't very many students in that category. So they actually attend out of district placements. But looking forward into 26, 27, we have a group of students who are going to need that program. So we want to make that program available for them. I do still see a further expansion of our emotional regulation impairment program, specifically going into our middle school. It's always the hope that we are able to, have that toolkit in the K-5 program so that there isn't a need for a more restrictive placement. But I think we have to be honest with ourselves that there are students who would benefit from that more focused instruction based upon their emotional regulation issues and disability. So I would like to see that at the middle school. I would say one room in one of the middle schools. I would also like to focus on, it's wonderful, absolutely wonderful that we have evidence-based reading instruction that is in students' IEPs, that is, a focused program that we have. I've never seen it. I've been in a number of districts and I've been a special education administrator. This is my 11th year. I've never seen it delivered the way it's delivered in South Orange Maplewood, and that's fantastic. But I would like to see, in addition to that, an infusion of that methodology, those practices, and those strategies, and that evidence-based reading structure in our classrooms K to 8, just as practice. And that will take some time. It takes professional development. It takes training. But we have teachers who are fantastic and willing and wanting. So we're going to provide that to them. Probably won't be done with that initiative this year, but we're definitely starting this year. Infusing executive functioning support district-wide. And this really branches beyond the needs of our special education population. It is a need that is throughout the entire district. So we're going to continue to provide our teachers professional development on that. It shouldn't be, in my mind at least, and I think the research says that it's not the best way to teach that in isolation. It should be something that, again, is infused in every class, helping our students and our kids have that executive functioning support, which is why I'm not calling it executive functioning skills. It's really providing them the support. And that has a lot to do with our teaching style. It's not just about the kids. It's about how we're delivering instruction and making it easier for them and not harder. And again, that is across the board. That is not just for our special education students. And then finally, this is something, the implementation of PL 2025 C107, that's just the citation. And I actually have the link there for anyone who wants to read the DOE guidance. It's basically, it's not starting until July 1st, 2026, but there will be some additional, and some of you may have heard already about it, additional annual IEP meeting notice requirements, a set of, and still, it's the big talk in all of the county meetings and the threads that I have with all of my administrator colleagues throughout Essex County. We're all trying to figure out the best way to cohesively and consistently do this and follow the guidance and follow the law. But we are going to start implementing that on a test basis this year. It's not required and it's not law officially until, and the implementation isn't official until July 1st. But we do want to kind of work out the kinks, and that is the DOE guidance to do that. So areas of concern. I do want to talk about some of the elephants in the room. Teacher vacancies. I want to make sure that everyone understands that these areas of concern are not going unnoticed. We are seeing your emails. We are addressing them as necessary. We're working together as an SLT with building leadership and all of the supervisors to make sure that we are doing the very best we can. Teacher vacancies, it is something that the entire state and I think the country, is really dealing with. So the way that we are, managing that and coping, I would say, with that is, of course, posting everywhere that we can, interviewing all of the viable candidates, but it's important that we find the right candidate. So we want to take our time in doing that. As we do that, we're also reaching out. I've actually, on the October agenda this month, you will see some new contracts with, we're trying to procure some additional vendors, additional educational agencies that may be able to provide special education teachers. But again, we have to make sure that we're vetting them. We have to make sure that we are making sure that they are right for South Orange Maplewood. And we will continue to do that, and we'll continue to communicate. We will continue to, fill in the gaps, and just know that this is unfortunately not unique to South Orange Maplewood. It is the common thread in every email that I see exchanged with my colleagues throughout all of New Jersey, really. Student behaviors, we have to acknowledge that we are seeing an uptick. I don't quite know why, but we're seeing an uptick in behaviors at the lower and lower grades, kindergarten, preschool, first grade. We're seeing these behaviors, and we need to come together as a school community, as an education community, and support our students. So to that end, and this is something that we saw last year. So at the tail end of last year, we partnered with a company called Lives in the Balance. If you're familiar with Dr. Ross Green, he's one of my favorite authors. I read his book, Lost in School, and all of his subsequent books, but Lost in School was the first book I read. In my first or second week, I started reading it. I was a new administrator, assistant principal, and director of special services for New Horizons Community Charter School. My first administrative position in 2011, and I've read it cover to cover. Lost in School, read it cover to cover twice, and it's a phenomenal book. He's a phenomenal person, and he has a company called Lives in the Balance, and their model is called the Collaborative and Proactive Solutions Model. And we have partnered with his company, and specifically, one of his folks, Kim Hopkins. She came in at the the tail end of last year, in the late spring, and we thought that we would start out with our MTSS team. So MTSS, I under S, a student is struggling, because again, this is not just a special education initiative. This is a whole school community issue that we are seeing. And a lot of times, students are referred to the child study team evaluation process because behaviors are seen. It's not always a special education issue, and it's not always something that it's not always support that has to be delivered through an IEP. And we need to come together, general education and special education together, to address these needs. So Kim came in at the end of last year, started with our building principals and our MTSS teams. This year, we're expanding that to coaching within our classrooms, and not so much coaching within our classrooms as in Kim Hopkins coming into our classrooms, but basically when behavior intervention is happening, they're following a very specific model, collaborative proactive solutions model, and then they're coming back to Kim and having virtual sessions where they go through how these sessions went. How did it go? What did the child say? What did I say? And she's critiquing them. And we're developing plans specific, general education, special education, it doesn't matter. We're developing specific plans to address that student's behavioral needs. We're also seeing a need for increased BCBA support, behavioral consultant support. When I came on board last year, I believe we had 2 full-time positions, but they were filled by three people from an outside agency. At this point, we have 1 in-district staff member that was just hired this year, Kathleen Dennehy, who is our in-district BCBA. I was able to keep 2 full-time people from an outside agency, and by the end of technically by November 1st, we're looking at adding another BCBA. So I have made it very, very clear, and I have, thankfully, the support of the SLT and the business office and Jason and the special education committee of the board and the board at large, I'm sure as well. If we're going to endeavor to keep students in district in the least restrictive environment in our community schools, if we're going to build our programs the way I know how and the way that we should, we need that increased support. We have to train our teachers. We have to train our paraprofessionals. We have to train everyone in a cohesive way to address students that are having behaviors so that we can keep them in that least restrictive environment. So I'm happy to report that. Transportation. I feel like we're doing better with transportation than we were this time last year. However, we still have a long ways to go, and we appreciate your patience. Keep the calls coming, keep the emails coming. The transportation department is working hard. We are working hard. I hear that our superintendent, Jason, was riding buses not too long ago. So that's fantastic. It's an all hands on deck initiative. So just know that we're continuing to work on it, and we will address the issues as they come. Paraprofessionals. We have rectified the issue that we had starting in the beginning of this year. Our directive to ESS was that our ABA paraprofessionals were to remain at the Para 2. Those who were credentialed and had the experience and the credentials, of course, as a Para 2 in those ABA rooms, are to be compensated as such, of course. There was something lost in the translation, and that didn't quite make its way. So there was a little bit of a hiccup at the beginning of the year. That has absolutely been fixed, and those ABA paras have not only started to obviously be compensated correctly, but they've been compensated retroactive to July. So anyone who worked in ESY in those roles as Para 2 are being compensated accordingly. So, we continue to work with ESS. They're working through contract negotiations. We're working in tandem with them. It is their contract. It is, they are, ESS's employees, but they're still in our buildings. They're still part of our family and part of our support system. So we speak on their behalf to the extent that, of course we can. And, we employ ESS. So, we take ownership in making sure that our paraprofessionals are treated and compensated in the way that they should be. And also on the flip side, making sure that we are getting qualified, people who are here to support our kids in the most appropriate manner. And I think that was it. I thank you for your time, and I guess I will stop sharing.